Hey, what's up guys? My name is Vinci Resolve and this is my 4K color and proxy workflow. Working with 4K footage can be a pain in the ass sometimes, so this is just a process I have learned over the years that has helped, I think, tremendously and to be most effective for not only the processing power of my computer, but it frees me up to make edits that I wouldn't be able to do if it was just 4K footage, because playback would either be too slow and I wouldn't be able to see it real time, and basically just it would be a lot of back and forth. I'm editing on the iMac 2017 5K. It has 64 gigabytes of RAM with a Radeon 580 with 8 gigabytes. And it handles 4K footage okay, not really too well, but I usually always make proxies. The gist of it is you'll color grade and make proxies in Resolve, then you'll go to your main program, edit like normal, get your timeline locked, everything where you want it. Then you'll go back to Resolve, color correct if needed, and then export at a high resolution, and then you'll overwrite basically the 1080p proxies, and then you'll go back to your main program, change your sequence settings, make sure everything's reading right, your transitions work, effects are working properly, and then yeah, basically just export in 4K and you're good to go. I hope you find this video helpful, and yeah, let's get into it. Open up Vinci Resolve and hit create new project. Name it anything you want and then hit create. Once it opens, bring your attention to the bottom tabs of the program. You'll see a media tab, which is basically like assembly, a cut tab, a edit tab, a fusion tab, which is basically like After Effects for Vinci Resolve, a color tab, Fairlight, which can be compared to like Adobe Audition, and then deliver, which you'll export from. Okay, going over to the media or assembly tab, Vinci Resolve does something really nice where it reads every drive you have or everything on your computer itself, and then you can just drag and drop from the program instead of opening up Finder and dragging and dropping from there. So I like to name my drives after Greek gods, mostly Hermes, because he is the god of knowledge. And we're gonna drag and drop, change our project settings because it hasn't failed me yet. And then from there, we're going to go to the cut tab, drag and drop again. And this is automatically going to create a new timeline, as you can see in the top left-hand corner. So this is some footage I got from Alaska back in 2019. I shot this in the old Blackmagic Cinema camera 4K, which it's a great camera. It shoots a beautiful image. It's just not too great in low light. It only shoots 30 frames per second, and when you're shooting RAW, the file sizes can be pretty immense. Not to mention there's a horrible black sun effect. But today we're just going to work with 3 different file or codecs: ProRes, RAW, and H.264. I feel like with these it'll give us a good enough knowledge to color and make proxies with. Once you have all your media on that timeline, go over the color tab, and this is where things will start to get fun. Whatever clip you are on, it's going to give you a corresponding waveform on the bottom right hand corner. If this doesn't show up, you can click the drop down menu and there should be a show scopes tab on the bottom. This is our Bible, this is our Quran, this is our God. We will stay faithful in between 0 and 1,000. Sometimes we will go outside of those ranges, but for the most part, we are faithfully staying in between 0 and 1,000. Alright, we're going to mess with the raw settings first, and then we'll get into the color grading after. Ideally, you want a waveform that's in the middle of your scope. If it's too low, that usually means it's underexposed, and too high means it's overexposed, versus if it was in the middle where you would get proper exposure. To change your camera raw settings, you're going to go to the first tab in the middle of your program that has the camera with the dotted circle around it. You're going to select it, and then go to decode using clip. After that, go down to your ISO. I'm going to change mine to 400, but change yours to whatever you would like. And then you can see that our waveform is much better as it is raised more to the middle and not so low. Okay, with this next clip, there's that black sun effect that I was talking about earlier. Thankfully, Resolve has fixed this with a one-click solution. Just right-click and hit Apply Black Sun Highlight Correction. So I guess it's 2 clicks, but easy enough. And then you can already see it got rid of all that. Okay, going back to our camera raw settings, we're going to go decode using clip, go down to ISO. It looks like we shot this on the lowest ISO we could, so we can't really do much with changing the ISO, but we can still do something. As this shot is still a little too overexposed, let's hit highlight recovery, and as you can see, it recovers a lot of information that wasn't there before, and it's looking a lot better. Okay, now that we're done with our camera raw settings, we can start color grading. I'm going to start with the ProRes files first, and then we'll do the raw, and then H.264 after. For the generic grade, we're just going to put a contrast of 1.2 and a saturation of 70. Let's double check our waveform and make sure the scope's within 0 to 1000 IRE. It looks alright, now let's dial in a specific color. Going to the node tree, right click on your first node, go to add node and select add serial. When there's a lot of contrast in your image, that is when it's going to be easiest to pull a certain color from them. Make sure you're on the color wheel tab on the bottom left hand side, then select the qualifier tool in the middle of your panel. Then in your source monitor, select the highlight option, and this will tell you what is selected. Looking at this image, I can already tell we'll be able to pull 3 colors, green, yellow, and red. Let's start with the bigger part of the image, everything that's green. Select and drag everything that you want to select, and if you re-click, it's going to start over from the point you clicked from. So I'm going to drag on this color green. Alright, it's selected what we wanted, so let's go to our color wheels. Lift is our shadows, gamma is our midtones, and gain is our highlights. And offset is going to be a mix of the 3. I generally tend to only mess with the offset wheel when pulling colors, but you can also use lift, gamma, and gain to pull colors, like say if you want your shadows to be more blue or your highlights to be more yellowish red, so you just pull them to where you want the color to be. The bottom black part of the wheel is strictly used to higher or lower the intensity of your highlights, midtones, and shadows, or your offset. The inside of them is made of color, so you want to make your shadows more blue, you drag your lift towards the blue color. Alright, going to the offset wheel, we're going to select the dot in the center and drag it towards the color we want to pull from it. In this case it's green, so we're going to drag it just a little bit towards the green side. And in my opinion, less is more here. You don't want to do too much and make it look bad. And you can already see it had a pretty big difference. But when we look at our waveforms, we can tell that we're crushing our blacks, but I'm looking at the image and there's just not a lot of blacks to be crushed, so the image is still looking pretty solid. And I would like you guys to keep in mind that these are just clips that I selected because I thought they would be easiest to pull color from and show you good raw settings. But not all clips are going to be easy to pull color from, so just keep a heads up that you might have to play with the qualifier even down on the bottom middle, and sometimes with your just overall selection, sometimes you might have overlapping colors and then it turns out like shit. You just gotta play with it back and forth, be like a mad scientist and just trial and error, trial and error. Moving on, when you go to pull your second color, make sure you always add a serial node from that first generic node that we started with, or else you're going to be coloring a node that's already been colored essentially. At least that's the best way I can explain it. Alright, make sure you're on the color wheel, your qualifier is selected, and the highlight tool is selected on your source monitor. And then select your second color, drag to get the full color of it, go back to your offset. I'm going to try to make this a little bit more red, but that doesn't really work for me, so we'll just make it more yellow. This one I pushed a little farther. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now we'll pull the berries. So we'll go back to that first generic node, add serial, select our qualifier, make sure we're on the color wheel, select the highlight tool, select the berries, drag. Alright, then we go back to our offset, pull towards the red, and you can already tell that this image is substantially better than what we had. I mean, the generic grade did it somewhat of justice, but with everything that we put into it now, it looks really good, like National Geographic good, in my opinion at least. Now you could be done there, but when I look at the waveform, I see a lot of unused potential. I tend to usually crush the blacks in my image quite a bit. If it's a night shot, that's a little bit of a different story, but usually I always crush them just a tad. And then also you can see that there's a lot of unused potential on the top, so I'll raise the gain and just stretch that waveform out, and you could see we get already a better exposed shot. Now, when you start working with a lot of clips, you don't want to do this to every image. So to copy and paste a look, basically you'll right click on the source monitor and then that will pop up grab still. You'll click that. Then in your gallery, a reference frame will pop up and then you just click on the clip that you want to copy and paste that to. Then go back to that gallery, right click and just press apply grade and everything should transfer. Your node tree, everything you did, everything should transfer. This didn't work out for this image, so we're just gonna color grade it by hand. I'm basically just gonna be doing the same process over and over again, making a generic node and then try to pull 3 colors from it, the 3 main colors that are in the image at least. And I didn't realize I did this until I made this video, but again, I found it to work over the past few years. I will say you're only gonna be as good as your cinematographer. You need to have a good shoot, so I have a good edit. Going back over the years, here are the top 3 mistakes that I see cinematographers make. Shoot on your native ISO. With this, you ensure you're getting the most dynamic range out of your image. The camera I shot on had a native ISO of 400. The new Blackmagic pocket cameras have 2 native ISOs. 400 for when you want to recover the most in your highlights or day shots, and then you'll be able to change your raw settings from 100 to 1000. And then the second native ISO is 3200 for when you want to recover the most details in your shadows or night shots. In your raw settings, you'll be able to change from 1000 to 25,600. Remember to always keep a middle waveform on the native ISO. Preferably with the new Blackmagics, you should always shoot on the lowest native ISO and just make sure that it's well lit. I have found that renders the best results with that camera. Alright, with shutter speed and shutter angle, this in essence basically controls your motion blur of your image. To have a normal motion blur when at 24 frames per second, you should be at 180 degrees or 1/48 or 1/50 depending on your camera. Say you're shooting at a high frame rate or against a green screen. You need to lower your shutter angle to minimize that motion blur when you slow it down or when you key out. Because when you key out, motion blur is not very friendly to that, so you want minimal motion blur. Or if you want a drunk effect or exaggerated motion blur, you just open up the shutter angle. I know I kind of just skipped over color grading those 2 clips for you guys while I was ranting about what it means to be a good cinematographer, but it really is a repeated process. You just make a generic color node with a 1.2 contrast, 70 saturation, try to pull 3 main colors from the image, draw out the wave scopes with the lift and gain if you have anything left to push in the waveform. Okay, and we really didn't do anything different until we get to this last clip with the boat. I know the H.264 files can be a little harder to pull and grab colors, so you'll have to work with the qualifier just a little bit more, but it's not too challenging. Going to the image with the boat, we're just gonna make our generic color node, and then we're gonna only pull 1 color, and we're gonna try to pull most of the image besides our highlights or what we can see to be blown out. Alright, to finish up color grading, we're going to add a serial node here. And then we're going to make sure our highlight tool is selected. We're on our qualifier and our color wheels. I'm going to select the water here because I think it'll be easiest to pull most of the color from the image because the tree line is vaguely that color as well. Go to our offset. I'm going to pull this down towards the tealish blue greenish color because I'm going for our Ozark/early morning feel. And that works out okay, but the tree line is not keyed out or colored out as much as I wanted it to be. So we're gonna adjust there, and I make the mistake here by lowering the lift on the color, which I don't like. It's a little too surreal there. So I'm just gonna go back, fix my qualifier, and then you can see highlights or what's blown out isn't selected. And then we're gonna go back to our offset and go for the more early morning Ozark feel. And you can already see that image is looking very National Geographic to me. Like I said before, guys, less is more. We only used 1 node here and it served us without fail, giving us that early morning Ozark look. When you're done color grading, head over to the Deliver tab. Make sure your render range covers the entirety of your timeline. Click Render Individual Clips. Browse the location where you want to put your clips and select. You can change your format to MP4 or QuickTime with whatever codec you want. To keep the file sizes low, I suggest QuickTime or MP4 format at a H.264 codec. Make sure your resolution is rendered at 1920 by 1080. Head over to File. Under File Name Uses, select Source Name. Then create a file subfolder, something along the lines of Proxy Media. Then add this to your render queue and render what you got. And then just save and quit. And just make sure you don't ever rename your Proxy Media files. If you do have any VFX work, I suggest rendering out at source resolution and the original codec of the media because it won't translate as easily going back and forth between programs. With this workflow, it is similar strategy to divide and conquer. I'll color and make proxies in Resolve, edit in my main program, which is Premiere. My VFX work is done in After Effects, which I'll do 3D tracking with titles or whatever I need. I'll do sky removal, replacement, sometimes stabilization, and green screen removal. And then for my audio, I'll use Adobe Audition, and mainly I'm just doing noise reduction in there. In my experience, when you do this all in one program, it tends to bog down the performance of your computer depending what you're using. At least with Adobe products like making proxies, coloring all in one program, I just find it to be lacking in performance, and I'm trying to get the most out of my editing, so I dumb it down in proxies, divide in programs, and get the edit done. And I'm really glossing over this edit in Premiere because you can essentially do this workflow with any editing program. You just have to start in Resolve and then make your proxy media and then use your proxy media in the program of your preference. And essentially here I'm just adding warp stabilizers, doing some push-ins by adjusting the scale of the clips, also doing a little speed ramp. I will leave you with one little tip if you edit in Premiere. Instead of guessing with the slow motion under speed and duration, right click on your footage in your library and then go down to modify and then to interpret footage and then click on assume this frame rate is and then type in 24, and then you will always get the most out of your slow motion shots when you do that. Okay, once your timeline is locked and you have everything where you want it, you can save and quit out of your program and then go back into Resolve. Ideally, you want your clips to be already good with color by the time you get here, but usually there is some color correction that is needed, especially when you start working with bigger projects. So if you need to make any adjustments to the color, I suggest doing so now. Alright, then you're going to go to the delivery tab, make sure your whole timeline range is selected, browse your location, and select the folder where you made the proxy media from. Then select the format codec and type you want. I want QuickTime ProRes 422 high quality, and select render at source resolution. Make sure you still have individual clips selected, then go to file and make sure you're still rendering media with their source name, but you don't need to create a subfolder this time since we chose the location to be proxy media. Then you're going to add it to the render queue, render it, replace, and this is basically going to overwrite your 1080p footage with the 4K footage. You could tell this by going back into your editing program, and you could see that all your clips will look scaled in or zoomed in. Now you can fix this two ways. Right click on the clip in the timeline and hit scale to frame size. That's the long way because you'll have to do this with every single clip. The easiest way is go to your sequence in your library and right click and click change sequence settings. Then you'll type in 3840 by 2160 or whatever 4K or high resolution dimensions you were rendering out at. Hit OK, and then you will see all your clips as they originally were during the final edit. Lastly, you just need to make sure all your effects and edits transitioned over properly, especially if you use any effect that analyzes your footage, like warp stabilizer. You will have to reanalyze all of them. This is tedious, but hopefully not necessary for every clip, and for the most part you know it will work because it worked when they were 1080p. So going through the effects on our clips, I goofed up and I accidentally exported a H.264 file to be ProRes, and you can't do that, so it's reading the media as offline. I, for some reason, thought I just lost the footage. You just have to be careful rendering with different codecs because some aren't as compatible going back and forth as others. And essentially, I'll just have to go back into Resolve and re-render this at H.264 with the source resolution. And that's the shtick of it, my guys. A nice, quick and easy 20-minute tutorial of how to color and make proxies in Resolve. If you have any questions, leave a comment below or message me. And if you felt this video was helpful, maybe like and subscribe. And let me know what I should do next. Thanks, guys.